All right, you guys, welcome back. So, we're still talking about marketing strategies and marketing plans. And so, you should probably know what you should include in your marketing plan and your marketing strategy. So, first, you want to name and describe your business. So, we were just talking about that in our last module about business descriptions. Then, you want to come up with a marketing philosophy. So, this is how you're going to approach your marketing, and we'll get more into that in just a minute. But it's, are you going to create products that are specific for your market, or are you going to just make the cheapest, fastest product you can and throw it out there? And so there's different marketing philosophies and focuses. You want to describe your target customers, and you want to describe them in a way that uses demographic data and psychographic data. You want to describe the benefit of your particular business or product and how it benefits that specific consumer. You want to identify your competition and talk about both direct and indirect competition, what they do well, right? What they are lacking, how you're going to do it better. You want to segment your market and choose a segmentation strategy. So you want to create a smaller target market, and then you want to decide, are you only focusing on that one specific market, or are you going to focus on several different segments? You also want to describe your promotional tactics that will maximize your exposure to your target as quickly as possible. So, what type of advertising are you going to do? How are you going to train your staff for one-on-one sales? How are you going to handle, incoming phone calls and emails? What types of promotions are you going to do? What kind of social media are you going to use? And then you're going to come up with a marketing budget. How much money are you planning on spending on marketing, and how will you use that money? So, again, you want to describe your business. When talking specifically about a marketing plan, if you do add any of a description, you want to describe it from a place of what's going on in the industry. How big is the market size? What is the market demand? And then any trends or notable changes happening in the industry. So when I say that, and this applies to your company description as well, what specifically is happening? So, like, if you were somebody who was manufacturing electric cars, obviously, right now in the industry, one of the huge changes, specifically here in California, is that gas is at $5 a gallon. There's a higher push now than ever for us to create more energy efficient and cheaper cars for us to be able to drive, right? And so that would be something that you would want to note. That's a change in the industry. That's a market demand, right? That we have to find a way to either make gas less expensive or to not use it since it is so expensive. Um, and then you want to explain how the above factors will affect the growth of your company, right? So I mentioned marketing philosophies, and there are 5 primary marketing philosophies. So one is the production concept. So basically, the production concept is that all of your focus is on producing something. And so it's generally something that's mass produced, and you want to make it as cheap as possible and accessible as possible. So I want you to think about cheap phone chargers, okay? You can find them everywhere. They're at every store that you go to. They're mass produced. You can buy them for $5, and they're not as high quality as, let's say, your Apple charger that you spend $80 on, and you have to buy a new one every couple of months. But we continue to buy them. So the idea here is build it and they will come. Okay. Then you've got your product concept. And so this is where you put all of the bells and whistles into your product. You make it as fancy as possible. And you don't really necessarily worry about what the consumer needs or wants. You just put everything you've got into it. So think about Rolexes, right? Think about, Rolls Royces, the super high-end, super fancy items. So you're putting all of your focus on the product itself, okay? Next, we have what's called the selling concept. So in the selling concept, the focus is on sales, not necessarily people or the target market. So when you're thinking about things like this, it's when you're getting those sales calls, do you want to refinance your student loan debts? Or, refinance or consolidate all of your debt in general? Uh, have you signed up for life insurance, right? So these are all selling concept where the focus is on selling the product and it's about pushing that particular product. And in some cases, it's pushed so hard that it's push it no matter what it takes. And so sometimes these particular business items or, insurances and things like that are misrepresented, and it leaves customers highly dissatisfied because they're promised things that can't be followed through with. So selling concept focuses on just selling an item. Then you have your marketing concept. So a marketing concept is focused on creating items that the market specifically needs and wants. And so they focus on creating something that is so true to their customer. These particular companies or this particular marketing philosophy means really, really knowing your target customer. And so the products that you're creating almost feel like they were personally created for those individuals or the end user, where they're like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been dreaming of, or this is exactly what I needed. And so that's where it's a little bit different. You focus on the feedback from your consumers or their input and create a concept based on them. Now, societal marketing concept is very, very similar to marketing concept. So it's focused on a target market and their needs and their wants and listening to them, and what their desire is. But they're also looking at a way of doing it in sustainable ways or in ways that will have very little environmental impact, or will use less resources. And so they're doing it in a way that will better society in the future. They may be focused on things like population growth. So Tesla, for example, is worried about our future and population growth, and so they're working on things that are energy efficient. Tom's Shoes is another example of they try to use sustainable resources, and they're helping, in populations that are growing really quickly that are very poor by giving free pairs of shoes. Patagonia would be another company that encourages people to be sustainable and careful with resources. And so they've even encouraged their consumers not to purchase their products any longer and instead to patch them or fix them instead of buying new ones. So these are some of the marketing philosophies here. So when you're writing yours, you want to see, what do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus specifically on creating and designing something that meets the needs of your customers, or do you want to make something so fancy and over the top that people can't help but want it? And so these are some of the things you want to think about. So we already went over target markets in this module, but basically you just want to describe your target market, how big of a market. We talked about breaking that down. You need to show an actual number, and you need to show this number and how you broke it down by using demographic, geographic, psychographic, and behavioral concepts. And then you also want to describe the benefit and value you are actually supplying to that individual market. You want to talk about your competitors, okay? And you really need to research your competitors. You need to know what they do well. You need to know how they can improve, what their weaknesses are, right? And what are you going to do better? How are you going to stand out from them? How are you going to steal customers that are going to them, okay? You also need to identify whether a competitor is a direct competitor or an indirect competitor. So a direct competitor is a company that has a similar or the same product or offering as you do. And so an example of this would be Pizza Hut and Domino's. They're essentially the same, okay? And so when people are craving pizza and they want to order it, they have to make a decision. Do I want Pizza Hut or Domino's, right? An indirect competitor is loosely in the same industry but has different products or services. So, a good example would be McDonald's and Pizza Hut. So, they're both in the fast food industry. They probably compete pretty often in a sense of when you're hungry and you're like, do I want pizza or do I want McDonald's? Or, hey, Pizza Hut and McDonald's are close. Which one do you want? Right? And so you have to make that choice sometimes. But they're not the exact same product or offering. Obviously, one serves burgers, the other serves pizza. Another indirect competitor comparison is, the grocery store and McDonald's. So you have that choice of either you want a hot meal right now or you'll have to wait and make your own food. Okay. So these are examples of indirect and direct competitors. When you're talking about, let's say, the retail industry, if you're talking about two surf shops within a 2-mile radius, those are going to be direct competitors. If you're talking about, let's say, a surf shop and a women's clothing store, those are going to be indirect. If you're talking about, let's say, a women's clothing store in the area and Target, those are going to be indirect competitors. Okay. So I'm hoping that this all kind of makes sense. Now you want to come up with your segmentation strategy. First, you need to figure out what is important for your business idea. What exactly are you trying to sell and who does it benefit? And so you need to find out. So for example, when we used the Andy, if you guys remember Andy from Breaking Down Target Markets, when we used Andy as an example, something that was exceptionally important was finding out who drinks beer, right? And how much beer did they drink? And so you need to figure out what is important for you to help start narrowing down your market. You also have to decide if you'll be marketing to multiple segments or just focusing on one. So, for example, if you owned a yoga studio, the most common ages for yoga are going to be, 18 to 35 and generally female, right? And so those might be your most common markets. So maybe you just want to market to them. Or you might want to segment out into, new moms. So there's a lot of moms in the Oceanside area. Maybe there's a whole lot of them that need to recover. And so you market specifically to new moms that are trying to recover from pregnancy and help with that tummy pooch and flexibility and getting back out there. Or maybe it's an area that there's a large retirement community, and so you want to focus on senior citizens and encourage them to keep moving and work on flexibility and movement and health. And so you can target different segments for different offerings. However, each individual market, you need to know them. You need to know their needs, their wants, their behaviors. Find out what drives them, okay? For some people, what drives them is the cost of things, okay? Maybe, it's a single mom out there who's got to, save every single penny. What drives her is going to be the cost and functionality. She wants the cheapest, but she wants functional, right? Maybe it is in your target market, they're really concerned about the environment. So you want to make sure that you're creating the most sustainable product using the least amount of resources as possible. And so you need to figure out what specifically drives your customers to make decisions about products. This is going to involve some research about them, right? When we're talking about segmentation strategy, here's some examples for you that may blow your mind. Some of you may be familiar with this. A lot of companies will use the exact same product in totally different packaging at a different price point in order to capture multiple market segments. So for example, Frito-Lay owns Tostitos and Santitas. If you're not familiar with what Santitas is, it's you've seen it at the grocery store, and if you haven't seen it, you're going to look for it now. It is the yellow package of tortilla chips, and it's got a beautiful Latina woman on the front with like a big sombrero hat on. And it's generally $1 to $2 cheaper than Tostitos. And so Frito-Lay had, a marketing strategy of having two separate segments. And so you've got your Tostitos and then you've got your Santitas, and they are the exact same chips inside. And so their strategy was they wanted to make a tortilla chip that seemed more authentic, something that they could market to Hispanic people. And so that was their idea, was to put it there. And then they also lowered the price point a little bit. And they're doing great in both. So like I said, same product, different package. Costco brand liquor is actually made by some of the most well-known liquor companies on the planet. And so when you're buying their Kroger brand vodka, it's made by Grey Goose. They have products made by Jim Beam and Macallan 18. And so they're the exact same product in different bottles. This is called private label. So sometimes what will happen is a company like Costco or Ralph's or Walmart, you'll see like Walmart brand or Target brand or Ralph's brand in their store. And they'll reach out to the manufacturing companies that create the brand name items and ask them to create a private label for them, meaning that they'll pay them if they just put, Costco brand on the label instead. So you're buying the same product for less than half the price. So for example, a bottle of Grey Goose is about $68. A bottle of the Costco brand liquor or vodka is $30, so less than half. Another example of this is Toyota and Lexus are the same company. And so in a lot of Lexus cars, they have the exact same engine as Toyota. Lexus, however, is put in different packaging, right? It's got nicer upgrades, nicer seats, they're fancier. However, the internal composition is the same, so they have the same engine. And so these are ways that you can think of if you want to hit multiple market segments. The idea is to create value. And so we're going to talk a little bit about value drivers. So value drivers are anything or any activity that you do that adds worth to a product, service, or brand. So it refers to those activities that add profitability, reduce risk, and promote growth in accordance with strategic goals. What will happen is you will create what's called a perceived value for your product or service. So a perceived value is a customer's opinion of a product's benefit versus the cost to them personally. Okay. They'll also have different perceived value. When you hear of an item that's really, really cheap, automatically you assume that it's of cheaper quality, right? And so there's different things that add to this perceived value of an item. So here are some perceived value. There are 5 types of utilities that companies aim to create through marketing campaigns for products. So form utility is the aesthetic appeal of it. It is, what does it look like? So you can change the design of a product over and over again in order to attract different customers or in order to increase its value. So for example, right here it says that a frying pan can increase perceived value based on its design. The other day, I saw a ridiculously expensive frying pan that had a little teddy bear's face on it. And quite honestly, I have a 3-year-old, so I was like, babe, we should buy this. She would love it. It would be hilarious. Of course, he talked me out of it, but the perceived value of it, I mean, can you imagine little pancakes, little eggs, all of those things for my daughter, and what benefit that would bring? The benefit would be her happiness to me, right? I would be willing to pay that extra money to watch her giggle every time she eats a pancake. You also have your task utility, is the value attached to a service that saves the customer time or effort or money. So You've got, your car detailing. You've got maid service, laundry service. So these people are allowing, or these services are allowing for it to take you less time, right? You don't have to put the time and effort in. Somebody else will do it for you. These are also, machines like washing machines. This is task utility. You don't have to do it, right? The washing machine is going to do it for you. You just throw it in there. Time utility refers to the ease of access to a service or a product, such as 24-hour service compared to 9 to 5 hours. So we're talking, your 7-Elevens that are open 24 hours a day. We're talking, banks that have phone service 24 hours, credit card companies. So AAA, things of that nature, where you can access them at any time of day. And so that's definitely very helpful. Place utility is the convenience of the location, like a fast food outlet that's right around the corner compared to a restaurant that's 20 miles away. And so the perceived value is going to be, it's going to take me less time. You know what? I'm really hungry, that Taco Bell's right across the street. I'm just going to go right across the street and grab Taco Bell rather than, jumping in my car and having to even drive just a couple blocks to, a different restaurant. And so their focus on perceived value is choosing correct locations that are going to be the most beneficial to their target market. Possession utility refers to the ease of purchasing the product. So a department store that features online ordering, home delivery, or in-store pickup. So possession utility and increasing the perceived value through possession utility, things like Walmart grocery pickup, are, really, really helpful. The ease of purchasing things on Amazon. When I was teaching this particular lecture in one of my classes, a student said that he picks Domino's over Pizza Hut just because their website is easier to order from for delivery. So these are all things to think about when you're trying to increase the perceived value of your particular brand or your particular product. Do you create a better design? Do you make it easier for them to get to, or easier for them to order or pick up? So these are ways that you can add perceived value. We will just be discussing more later on. Take some time out, take a break, and I will be talking to you soon.